Well, my name is Sevinch, and my business's name is Joy of Pole because Joy is my stage name,
Okay.
and it's a pole studio. But we do all sorts of stuff over there, of course. But it's mainly a pole studio.
Okay. Nice. It's a little bit choppy there, so we'll do our best. Obviously, it's not going to be the greatest reception at times. So, can you hear me okay?
Yes, it's actually perfect. I think I might wait a second. How is this?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I can hear you. It's fine. And actually, the shot's pretty clear now too, so we're good.
Okay,
Nice.
yeah, because I have to be outside because the studio is too crowded at this time of the day and it's
Yes.
really noisy. And
Yes.
I can't be at the office because my daughter is in there and she won't let me talk. So
Oh,
sorry about
yes.
that.
Mom woes. Yeah. So, and now, do you teach Pilates as well?
I do not teach
Okay.
Pilates,
Hmm.
even though I really like. I think I use Pilates things in my like warm ups or other things that I use, like conditioning for my students for the fall.
Yes.
I have
Hmm.
not actually got training for Pilates. I do teach mobility, but
Yes.
that's like a whole different type of training.
Well, yeah, and I'd love to talk about the mobility piece because it's different, but then it's not. Like for example, I teach Pilates, personal training, sports conditioning specialist, all those different things, and I decided a few months ago to change my business card to movement specialist.
Movement specialist is a great name,
Yeah.
actually. That covers like a lot more than everything, actually. Anything. Like I can't, when people ask me what I am, it's like I can't say pole instructor because it's not just that. I teach
Right.
floor acrobatics, I teach aerial acrobatics, I teach mobility, I teach skills, and it's just all movement. So I think
Yep.
it suits you more than whatever it was before. Movement specialist is a very good title.
Thank you. And then I think that's one of those things too where we have these different titles, or in business they talk about your elevator pitch, right? So you're in a coffee shop or wherever you are right now. If someone was to say to you, oh, what do you do for a living? And like, how do you concisely boil down exactly what you do?
I would actually say I'm a skill collector.
Okay, go on.
Yeah, I mean, it's just because I have done so many things in my life and they are all at core, even if they're not about movement, it's all the same thing. They are skills. Like
Yes.
I make tattoos, I
Oh yeah,
teach
that's
people
right.
how
Yeah.
to teach. Yeah. And I used to do architecture because I studied architecture and I danced, I did aerial skills, taught people how to teach things. So it's like, all in all, it's just skills and how to teach
Yes.
skills. That's also
How to
another
teach
skill.
skills. Right. Well, right. Exactly. Do you do a lot of teaching teachers?
I do a lot of teaching teachers nowadays,
Okay.
and um, it had to be done because at first when I started teaching pole, I was the only teacher here, and I needed other teachers, but no one was up for the task because they didn't think they could do it. So I started teaching my best students how to teach, and then it became a side thing for me to develop a teacher training because I did go to other teacher trainings on pole and I didn't find them like a weekend workshop is
Yes.
not enough to be able to teach people how to teach anything. So I
Hmm.
started to develop my
Right.
own process, and then it just became a teacher training that people come to in Turkey. Do you teach
Amazing.
any teaching teachers?
Do I? Um,
Yeah.
no, at this point, no. So I've done it in the past in the capacity of a personal trainer. I used to work for Lifetime Athletic or Lifetime Fitness, which is like a big company here in Canada, in the US, and they have a few locations in Canada. So when I was working there, I would do all the onboarding for new trainers. I teach them just, like all the stuff you need to know for the company, but then also tactics in terms of selling personal training and how to kind of dive deeper into that work as well. So that's my experience with that. And now in the Pilates world, I'm enjoying being a student. I'm enjoying teaching my people. And yeah, so maybe at some point do some teacher training, but I really don't see. There's a lot of fantastic teachers that do teacher training, like Bridge Pilates. Blossom just came on right now. Um, she's fantastic, and there are so many people who have awesome programs out there. Like, why reinvent the wheel? Like, I'm much more inclined to support someone like her. And Bridge, for example, she's Blossoms in New York, and there's people that do want to do a teacher training program, and they may be like, I want to learn with this person, but I don't want to have to fly out to New York or drive 3 hours. My studio can be like a satellite place where they can do their training, get their hours, learn in the same vein as what that person's teaching. So I'd be more inclined to make this a remote teacher training spot, a satellite location, than develop my own curriculum and mark essays and do like weekly apprentice meetings and stuff. I've seen it done really poorly, and I've seen it done really, really well. And those who do it well, kudos to you. Those who do it poorly, I'm glad I'm not you. Okay, so I'll just stay over here.
Yeah, it's really hard. I mean, reinventing the wheel is completely unnecessary. In my case, there was not anyone in Turkey who could do it, and the examples that were there in the international scene of pole dance, I didn't find was proper and enough. So I just decided, hey, I mean, I'm a nerd. I can do it.
Yes. A nerd in a good way.
Yes, definitely. But is there a nerd in a bad way?
I don't know. Like, if you're people could see that as such, but I love it. It means that you're hungry for knowledge, you're curious, and you want to learn more. And yeah, that's fantastic.
Oh my God, I love learning. I love reading. I love reading researches. I love seeing patterns and connecting the dots is one of my passions. It's just, that's probably, to be honest, I am not a very capable or talented pole dancer or a mover. Like, I have a hard time, like my nervous system is having a hard time, even though I've been dancing for, I don't know, for like 30 years now. It's still so hard for me because I've seen talented students of mine that can do things like that, like without needing to think about it or practice for it. And I'm not that, but I am, like, my brain works in a way to see and understand movement in a way that I didn't see other people do. So I'm trying to like incorporate that in my life.
Absolutely.
So I can be better at what I do.
Well, and that, I mean, that speaks to the ability to communicate what you know. And one of the ladies I had on this week, it was Chelsea. I was thinking it was Heather, but Chelsea, she does a motor learning theory course where she talks about how we learn and understanding how we learn. So you may not be as inclined to learn something like instantly and just get it in your body, but you may be fantastically talented at communicating it so people can pick it up in their own body.
Yeah, definitely.
That's a talent, right? Like, that's a gift.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, and being I would say mediocre performer is in like doing physical things, actually I think made me a better trainer, because I failed so many times and I have spent so much time thinking about what's wrong and what's right, what feels good, and why couldn't I do this and why would it work? Then I can just spot it instantly on a student right now.
Well, Savage, that's exactly it. I mean, that's a pretty deep philosophical phrase right there, right? Like through our failures, we learn and we get better.
Yes, definitely.
Yes.
I love well, it's not appropriate to say failures, I think,
Mhm.
because it's all like, um, it's all experience for the body. There is no
Yes.
failing for the body. It's just different experiences. And I see it with my daughter too. Like, she doesn't care if she falls 100 times while she's trying to figure out walking or jumping. She
Yeah.
just does it over
Yes.
and over again and fails differently until she feels something that is right.
Yes. Well, we're saying the same thing there, and inspired to wellness has a comment. I'll say it in 1 second here, but um, we're saying the same thing. But not to say you're afraid of it, but I'm not afraid of the word failure. Like I can take failure and internalize that failure and channel that towards, okay, what do I need to learn, what pivots do I need to make and move forward instead of getting stuck at the failure.
Definitely. If you can do that, that's amazing.
Mm.
I think, I don't know how I think it must be different in like, um, maybe cold or maybe clientele. Like I'm working with a highly like female clientele, mostly
Yes.
female, and even I don't have a problem with failure. Like, I love
Mhm.
failing. I don't see it as like negative. But if a
I don't
person,
know if I love failing. That's, I, time out. but, but
it depends, because sometimes I discovered in my movement researches, when I'm trying to do something, my fails end up doing like becoming the most interesting transitions that I have discovered. So in that
okay,
case, what is failure? Like, is it not
right.
being able to do something that you wanted to, or like complete failure?
Ah, true. That's pretty deep. Yeah, I'll drink to that.
So in in that case, like, I have seen people, like my students, not being able to do what I showed them, but some of them, and usually at least half of them, actually, half of the failures that I see are pretty interesting variations of something else. Like, and I
Yes.
sometimes watch them and I tell them, it's like, hey, you're not actually doing what I am showing you right now, but you're doing something
Yes.
really interesting. So
Yes.
first, let's look at this, because this is really interesting, and I would like to create something out of it. Your body obviously
Yes.
would like to do this, and
Hmm.
then, because I want to create like an understanding, like a communication between what you're seeing and what your body is capable of, let's also try doing what I'm showing you.
Yes. Perfect. And and that actually reminds me of something that I see happen with my son in his basketball. At 14, they're teaching them fundamentals, they're teaching them how to do certain plays and all these different things. But they all have this little flair because they've seen other people do things and then they have their own creativity and imagination. So they're always making up their moves. And there's this sweet spot between teaching them fundamentals and allowing them to have their own personality layered into what they're learning.
Mm, yes, definitely.
And that
And
sounds, I
it's a
sound that that's
tricky
it, eh?
one.
Yes, it is tricky. Yeah.
Yeah, because like I think I have changed a lot in 10 years as a teacher in Cole. And at
Mhm.
first I was so about teach them how to do the fundamentals and the technique correctly, whatever correct is,
Hmm.
and then try to teach them how to be creative. But
Yes.
it didn't work, because
Hmm.
once they record something in their brain as technically correct, they
Yes.
couldn't decompose it, and they couldn't do something
Yes.
different.
Yes.
So now
I
I
see what you're
think
saying.
I'm more in like, okay, but if this is something that is not going to harm their bodies, if this is safe, then I just allow mistakes to transform the creativity of the students and not like trying to teach them the one correct way that I think is working for everyone.
Right. Yes, exactly. Inspired to Wellness had a comment here that says, since it doesn't come naturally to you, it means you are more compassionate instructor that can break it down really well.
Yes, definitely. I mean, I think I would like to believe I'm a compassionate person in general, but
Mhm.
it does reflect to my teaching and I can break things down pretty well.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. I've always said to teachers too, when I'm teaching, when I was doing courses before, I would encourage them to go out and learn something that's not in their wheelhouse. Go take a guitar lesson. Go take, you know what I mean? Something like that. And then I don't know if this has happened to you, but I've been in a situation where learning how to play the guitar and the guy says, okay, I want you to play this scale. He's like, da 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 da. Here, go. And you're like, bing, ping, like you can't figure it out as fast. And then I realized that that's what my clients feel like when I say, okay, I want you to go down and do these push-ups. And then after you're done your push-ups, we're going to like they can't pick it up that fast. So then it gives you some compassion in the way that you present it as well, knowing that they're lost in that moment until they can figure it out as well.
Oh my God, yes, that is so true. Like if you're trying, and I always try to learn something new just because I'm a curious person. And uh,
Hmm.
I don't train pole so much anymore, except like
Okay.
just doing combos and interesting stuff that I would like to try. So
Hmm.
I have more time to try other things, but also after I gave birth, it was a kind of a traumatic birth for me, so it took me so long to heal,
Okay.
and my core was literally destroyed. Like
Mm-mm.
it was gone, non-existent. Still isn't 100% back yet.
Sounds
Then
traumatic.
I had it was yes, and then I had so much understanding for my like newcomer students because I couldn't
Yes.
like it has been 1.5 years and I still just started being able to do push-ups.
Yes.
It's like it takes time and you forget it as an instructor. If you
Hmm.
stay in just one lane for too long, you forget how it is for a person who hasn't done it before.
Right. Absolutely. Yeah. And the other layer to that in terms of learning new things is I'm always fascinated on how people teach it too. So there's two parts to it. Like I like learning something new, like the guitar or some new Pilates thing or whatever. That's one thing. So I'm learning the new content, but I'm also learning how to teach it from the different ways that they teach it because they may have a different style or they may be placing emphasis on something different than I would. So I always look through two lenses, like one lens of what is the content I'm learning, and then also the lens of how is this person presenting that content.
Yeah, that is so true. And it's really interesting to me when you talk about like learning Pilates move. I really don't know so much about Pilates. I'm a little
Mhm.
embarrassed about that. But like,
That's okay. I only talked to like 100 Pilates people, like, so it's all good.
yeah. Well, and how do you guys, because in pole, it's like the options are unlimited. And it's
Mhm.
like there's always like new creation, new combinations that you can learn. But how does like a Pilates instructor such as yourself, who has been working so long in the business anyway, still learn new Pilates stuff apart from the new perspective from the teacher?
Uh, Yeah, I think a lot of it is perspective because I was going to ask you a similar question about pole, but in the Pilates world, with the way that Joseph Pilates taught the exercises and then the original quote unquote authentic exercises, most people are taught that classical way of teaching it. And then it branches off from there, but there's a common understanding of what the base exercises are. And then after that, it's people's signature on it. There's people's perspective on it. It's people developing exercises to address specific corrective exercise needs or corrective or performance needs for people. So that's how you get those different iterations of original exercises. So you're right in the sense that there is nothing new, but when you go to different people and learn different formats and learn different styles and different points of emphasis, then you discover what you need for your own personal client base. Like what the people that you work with every day, what do they need? So I may seek out people who teach different versions of those exercises that are going to address my clients that have hip issues, or my clients who are professional athletes and they need to work on their performance. So I think that's it. Like, I mean, you learn the fundamentals, and everyone should know the fundamentals, and then the different variations of those fundamentals to address specific populations is where the learning is continuing to happen.
Oh, okay. Yeah, it makes sense then.
Yeah.
Well, in pole, it's a little different. I don't think we have fundamentals. I mean, everybody has a different idea of fundamentals. And like 15 years ago, it was different. 15 years ago, when I started pole dancing, it was only like maybe 30 moves. And everyone was just working on them, and it was variations of those, and it was more super style, let's say, like not sports, because it was just when first pole started, it was mostly strippers who started doing it, and who we learned from were also strippers. So we just learned from them, and then when it became popular, and when people who studied or like trained athletes in gymnastics started coming into the sport, then there's a whole new era started opening. Or like circus people who do Chinese pole, it became more acrobatic. Yes, it became more flexible. It became like the hardest move that we had 15 years ago is now available in just 6 months doing pole. And it's not even like a thing to think about it. And still, there's people who are inventing new moves every day, just because, you know, they can pull the back of their knee and sit on top of their head, and they try a different variation of that on the pole.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. I can show you that after if you want. The head on the And you like a contortionist, like it's crazy how flexible you are. And I think that that's what that ties into that, right? Like with pole, you have these exercises, and then as people are getting stronger, they're coming from different backgrounds, like you're saying, like from acrobatics or gymnastics or whatever, they can just have their own expression.
Yes,
people
definitely.
mimic that, and people mimic that expression, right? Like, and people just say, okay, that's the new gold star exercise, right?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, it depends, because you don't have to be just flexible. There are people who are not flexible but super strong. There are people who have more endurance, and there are people who are more dynamic, and there are people who have more air awareness on the pole. And everybody can create from what they've got. So it's not just about, not everyone in pole is super flexible. I mean, if you want
or super strong, or
super strong, yes, exactly. So I mean, you gotta I would like to improve on my weak sides, which is strength and dynamism. Is that a word? Being able to explode.
It is now.
Is my is my weakness. So I like to work on them. But if I'm going to create something, I'm going to create according to my strength, which is I wouldn't even say my flexibility, but my proportions. I have monkey arms and super long legs, which helps me create really weird shapes on the pole that no other person, if they don't have super long arms and legs, would be able to do, which is a plus.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. How did you find pole in the first place, and what made you decide to make this like your fitness and your passion project, so to speak?
I fell in love with it. It's like there's no other way to explain it because I've been dancing for so many years. I've done ice skating competitively. I've done aerial, like I've worked as a circus performer on trapeze, and I
Wow.
met Paul during when I was working as a rigger and a performer in a troupe in Australia. I was doing trapeze, but there wasn't enough people to train with because I was the only one doing static trapeze and my style was a little different than the others. So, and I wanted to practice with other people, and there was a pole over there, and it was a Chinese pole. It was not a dance pole. So it was a Chinese pole, and somebody told me, why don't you train on the pole? It would be good conditioning because it's super hard. And I was like, no, okay,
Yeah.
I'll just try it. And I went there,
So
and
what's the
the
difference
teacher,
between the Chinese pole though? Sorry, I
Chinese
don't know the difference between the two.
Chinese pole is thicker and is coated with rubber or a sticky material. So you
Okay.
do it with shoes on and really layered clothes, not to burn your skin. And typically, if you asked this to me 10 years ago, I would say it's more acrobatic, but now pole dance has actually incorporated a lot of the Chinese moves, so it's equally acrobatic. But
Okay.
it's kind of, I think the stickiness of the Chinese pole does add a lot to the movement feeling of it.
Okay,
Like
cool.
they just look different.
Gotcha.
So that's the Chinese pole, and it's definitely harder
Hmm.
than pole dance, in my opinion.
Hmm.
If you look at it from a Chinese pole technique perspective,
Okay.
there is not so many easy moves. In pole dance, there is a lot of easy moves that you can do on the floor while you're gaining strength for the harder moves. But on Chinese pole, you're like, okay, let's do a pole handstand. You can't do it? Okay, you can't come in.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's inclusive. Great. Yeah.
Yes, yes, definitely. It was a little hardcore, but that first lesson, it took us to warm up for 2 hours, first of all, and I was dead at the end of a warm up, and I was like, and then we are gonna climb the pole. How is that gonna work? And then, but I did, and it was just love at first touch. Like I
Okay.
touched the pole, and I was like, this is it. This is something that I want to do for the rest of my life. And funny enough, that's how I met pole dance because I just Googled pole Sydney,
Hmm.
and I didn't even look at the studio. There was just the first answer coming up from the Google. I enrolled classes. I thought it was the same thing. I had
Yeah.
no idea what like exotic pole dance was because we don't have clubs in Turkey that
Okay.
do
Yeah.
that. So
Okay.
I haven't seen that. I didn't know what it was. And I didn't know that
Really?
they were done half naked either. So I just went there
Wow.
thinking, oh, this is gonna be just like the pole I did, but maybe a little bit more contemporary dance.
Yeah,
And I
well,
happened to
a lot more contemporary.
a lot more
Whole lot more
contemporary.
contemporary. Yes.
Very
Yes.
experimental for sure.
That's
And the
great.
studio that I've been into, coincidentally, is the sexiest pole dance studio of all times. Not just now, but all times in Australia. It was Bobby's Pole Studio, which like the sexiest performers came from. And I just entered. There were like pink fluffy carpets, people in wearing lace underwear, walking in like 10-inch heels, and I was like just this tomboy girl who had no idea
Right.
what she walked into. And I was just like,
You're like,
okay,
yeah,
what are we
yeah,
gonna do now?
that's
But
awesome.
because I paid for it, I just stayed and then ended up loving it.
Yes. And here we are today.
And here we are today, yes. And I just like it was a beautiful form of dance because like it was I would have to say, I think pole dance was a lot more, I don't know if that's the right word to say because I really don't mean it as an insult.
Hmm.
I would say it was sluttier in a good way. Like when it first started, it was more expression of sensuality
Yeah.
um, and about things we wouldn't be able to do in a normal like sports class. Like the way that we use our bodies was like it was empowered more in a sexual way. And that's why I
Yes.
stayed, honestly, because I sucked at that. And I thought I
Mm.
didn't look sexy. And I thought just because I'm not wearing the right things or like didn't have long hair, always thought that I was not a sexy woman. And I didn't feel
Yes.
like it. But when I entered
Hmm.
that studio, saw all those women just enjoying their bodies around the pole, it just opened up
Yeah.
something in me. And I wanted to share it with every other woman that I know from Turkey because I thought Turkey needed it. And that's
Yeah.
why I went home and opened the
Wow.
pole studio. Not because it was a cool spot.
Right. So do you say they said open something? Would you say like it just awoken something in you?
Yes, definitely.
Okay.
Yes.
Yeah.
Just because it was non-judgmental, honestly. Because
Yes.
I didn't have to look a certain way. Well, at least back then it was.
Hmm.
Um, there were like all sorts of different shapes and colors of bodies in one class, just giggling and like, complimenting each other, helping each other out, and, you know,
Yes.
making each other feel good.
That's beautiful. Isn't it sad at the same time now that we have to label that like creating a safe space? Or we have to create a judgment-free zone, or we have to be intentional about just making spaces as safe as you experience naturally?
Yes, now that you put it in words like that, it does feel a little sad that now we have to be like actively trying to do it instead of it naturally happening.
Mhm.
Why is that, do you think? Because it did really happen so naturally back in the day, especially when things are first starting out.
Yeah,
When pole dance wasn't so famous or something else wasn't so famous.
right, right. Well, I mean, I have some philosophies on just like social media and just the number of images that we're competing with right now. But when you open your studio, did you get a lot of pushback and a lot of judgment at that time when you open it?
When I opened my studio, it was the first pole studio in Turkey, and I was
Wow.
scared so much about what the society would do because Turkish society is a little, um, how would I say it?
Conservative?
Yes, conservative is the right word. They're conservative, and we couldn't advertise at first. Like it was just,
Mm-hmm.
I started with 8 people who were my friends, who then told their friends. And when people were coming to the studio, they couldn't tell their family where they were going. It was just, oh, it's a dance class. What kind of dance? Yeah, it's just dance kind of thing.
Right.
So,
Yes.
I mean, we were all afraid, but I just wanted to do it so much that I didn't care. And I did get a little pushback at some point because then people started hearing about it and they called me to Turkey Got Talent. And I went on TV doing pole dance in
Okay.
Turkey, and the
Yes.
channel got fined
What?
500,000 Turkish liras because
What?
of indecency. Like people,
Wow.
yes, grown men came together, had a meeting, and decided that my performance was indecent for Turkish population.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's
that was a
crazy.
little that was a little uncomfortable couple of weeks for me because I also had like blue hair and a certain look. My tattoos, like it's not like you're not gonna be able to say, "Oh, that's not her."
Right, right. Yeah. No, it's the other girl with blue hair and tattoos, right?
Yep, definitely. It
Yeah.
was a little scary, especially people who you would say educated, who wrote stuff about my performance. That and it was contemporary pole. I didn't like do any of the usual pole moves that would
Yes,
in
like
any way.
overly sensual or anything like that.
Yeah, and my
Yeah.
outfit was picked for that, for the TV as well. And it's like, how do you see it that way? Like, how can you
Yes.
see that as indecent or immoral or I don't know? It was weird. But then again, also, at that time, my studio was in a more, how do you say? There's, in every city, there's like a place where car mechanics go and
Yeah,
like
like an industrial area.
yes, industrial area. So we were in an industrial area, still are, by the way, because we have them make our poles. And before that, they had no idea what those poles were. Like the people, the workers who were
Ah,
doing the
yes.
poles, they had no idea because we didn't tell them. But after that show got famous and like everybody saw me, and one
Yes.
of a person who worked with making our poles, who probably only graduated primary school, came to me and said, "Oh my God, how can you hold yourself up with your armpit?" And I was like,
Yeah.
wow, perspective. Like we're talking about
Yes.
education, and this is important and
Yes.
that is so important. But there you are, people who have PhDs in communication is talking
Hmm.
about my performance as immoral and judging it. This person,
Yeah.
who is probably considered uneducated for most people, is able to see how hard it is to be able to hold yourself up
Appreciate
with
it.
just armpits.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. Yes. That's amazing. So from
Yeah, so
there,
it
obviously,
was.
your enrollment like grew. Like,
Well, kind of, you could say, but then people were able to talk more about the fact that they're doing pole dance at least, which helped a
yes.
lot to build the industry in our country
Hmm.
because they were saying, I am doing pole dance because they wanted to feel proud. And then the people would say, oh, like the girl that was on the TV, oh, people didn't really appreciate her. I don't think that was right. And, it created a
Mm.
conversation. So, all in all, it
Wow.
was, yeah,
Yes, it wasn't a failure.
it was not. Although it was hard and shameful
Yes.
for a while.
I could appreciate how difficult it must have been for you being a trailblazer.
Definitely. But
Yeah.
I mean,
Wow.
I don't know. All in all, it worked well. So no, it wasn't a failure. I would do it again if I was back then. I would definitely not do it now. But back then, if people like, if given chance, if you could erase that, I wouldn't. I would still do it. So
Right, right. That's amazing. And being in this Pilates world, I see like Joel Crosby's on there and some other Pilates instructors. I can't imagine being the only person in my country doing my craft and having people look at it suspiciously.
it is hard. It is hard. It was so hard to get motivated. I mean, I envy uh, Pilates for that reason. For example, you would
Yes.
be able to find other people doing Pilates all over the world.
Hmm.
But here I was trying to build something and didn't have anyone to do the same thing with me.
Yes. Wow.
And now, like my students who are more advanced, when
Hmm.
I teach them, especially difficult and dangerous tricks, I know how to spot them. I spot them. And they do it, and they suddenly stop and say, wait, how did you figure this one out? Because when you were doing these things, there weren't anybody to spot you. And I was like, it was a mental challenge.
Yes, absolutely. So impressed with your courage to do something so different. There's a comment there.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah, yes, it was hard, but thanks.
Yeah.
It's nice to be heard.
No, absolutely.
Yeah.
So what are you doing now? What happens in your studio, in your space today, and what does tomorrow look like?
Well, tomorrow we don't have any lessons
Yeah.
actually, but
I meant like
uh,
kind of like tomorrow in terms of the,
yes,
the
yes.
future remix. Yes.
I'm just joking.
No, okay.
Yeah. Today, because now the students, especially the first couple of times that I taught teacher training, now they all have their own studios. And now we do
Okay.
have a lot of pole studios who has their own styles. I just decided to move more towards, actually, I realized that I don't have to stick with the things that I don't like doing anymore. Because before I was like,
Oh,
if I'm going
yes.
to create a well-rounded culture, then I have to do all of it. Because these people will need to be able to choose for themselves in which way they would like to go. So even though I didn't like power moves, I had to learn them, or I had to practice them, I had to teach them. And
Right.
now I don't have that responsibility anymore, because now I did create like other people who choose different paths. I
Yes.
realized that I can work on whatever I like. And
There you
it's
go.
mostly, yeah, it is so great. It's so exciting to be able to just focus on what you like about something.
Yes.
And that happens to be movement research
Hmm.
and not tricks. There are some tricks as well, but I don't teach so many pole tricks anymore. I try
Okay.
to teach concepts. And we
Nice.
have conceptual classes, like how do we use floor and acrobatics with pole? Like how do we create a connection with those? How to create a fourth dimension? What is
Hmm.
horizontality
Wow.
on pole? How do we create this connection? How do we create different transitions between two moves? How can we create our own move that will be unique for us, for example?
Yes. Wow. Wow. That's pretty
Yeah,
technical.
it is, and it is so exciting. Like the good nerd in me is so happy because I've been thinking about these concepts for so long, and now I have a venue and the opportunity to share it with people who would like to go deeper into the whole techniques
Yes.
or expression, let's say. Like
Amazing.
you said, expression is a really good word.
Absolutely. Are these like online courses? Someone like in Canada can like sign up and just follow you along digitally with these courses, or are they just live local?
I really like to teach face to face, like
Hmm.
personally. In the corona times, I was doing some live classes, but I couldn't like, because I really love to watch people
Yes.
or like give feedback. I didn't
Hmm.
like how the live classes felt for me. Either I was like not able to show properly or not able to watch them properly.
Yes. Yes.
So now I do teach online classes, but it's more private classes, not group classes. But I also
Yes.
have, like, we have built with my sister an online school, which has courses on it with
Okay.
different concepts. Like I teach one move and then I talk about how it's what's the idea behind this move rather than how it should look like in a perfect world. Like the idea to
Yes.
hold behind your knee and in your armpit, but your other leg can do whatever you like. And if you move it that way, then you would end up in this way, kind of. And we have
Yes.
those
Those,
courses
those
available
principles.
online. Yes, the
Yeah,
principles and the strategies.
cool.
I
Nice.
think Pilates world has a different approach to movement in that sense. Uh, how I don't know how it is for you guys, but what is technique for you? Is there like
Yeah,
a
yeah, I heard you saying there it is like I was saying earlier about the fundamentals, like there's an exercise and then you would break that exercise down. And then you'd also have a discussion around where you can do that exercise. So let's say, for example, your exercise, your hundreds, where you're up in the ab curl and pumping your arms. You can do that on the mat, like behind me here. You could do it on the reformer. You could do it all these different places. So yes, and so that's exactly it. So then you take a concept, and then you teach where else it can be taught, what the idea, what the principle is behind it, and like what Joel just said there, you're teaching the idea rather than what it should quote unquote look like.
yeah?
Yeah.
So it is still understood that like an exercise would be able to look different in other people in Pilates as well.
Yes, exactly. Yep. Yep. In
Okay.
theory, that's there's people who are really staunch like it has to look like this and it's funny. Joel and I had a running joke yesterday where I took a picture of him doing exercise and put a angle like a compass and say like you're at 38 degrees instead of 39 degrees because there's people out there that would be that particular. So I was just making a
Oh,
mockery of the fact that people can be that staunch with it. So it is about movement. It is a celebration of movement, an expression of movement, and an idea rather than the precision of it. So yeah, yeah,
yeah, definitely. Although until I have come to this understanding, I was at once one of those people who would measure the angle between whatever limbs. So
yes,
I think it's a growth process sometimes with
yes.
people.
Oh yeah, totally. It is totally a
And
growth process. That's the
also,
picture, by the way.
oh yeah, yeah, I
Like
can
that's
totally
totally
see it.
wrong. He's off by one
Yeah,
degree, right?
yeah. Your
I
ribs should
mean,
be more in. Pull your belly button in.
right? Yes,
Definitely.
yeah, it's fun.
So yes, I think I
Um,
have
yeah.
grown into it.
I think we all are. I mean, like we have to start somewhere with fundamentals, and then as we get more confident and comfortable in our own skin, then we can really start to just find what the truth is. And we have about 2 minutes left, but one of the lines I've said is the main thing is to keep the main thing the main thing.
That's a great that's a great sentence. I love it. Yes.
Right. So whether it's pole or Pilates, are we back to teaching the people in front of us? Are we back to celebrating the movement and the idea behind the movement, or are we getting fussy about leg angle, on an exercise? So yeah,
Definitely. And sometimes I feel like somebody's, whether it is a student or a trainer, their understanding of aesthetics can get in the way of teaching a technique, which feels good for the person who is doing it.
yes,
Because like you can do the same thing when you're like 20 years old and 30 years old, and your body is completely different and it will look different and it will feel different
yeah,
and you're going to perform it in a different way, and that's the right technique for you then.
yes, yes, absolutely. Thank you for this chat today.
Thank you for inviting me. Yes, it was a great conversation.
Oh, so good. I'll send you the replay later. I really appreciate you ending your day with me as I'm starting mine.
Thank you for starting your day with me. And I may have been a little overexcited to talk because it has been so long since I had a conversation with a movement person, an adult, without having my baby around. It was just so nice to be able to share this.